Before temples rose or poets sang, there was silence, and from that silence a thought began to take form. From the depths of creation came Metis, the Titaness of wisdom, her mind vast as the ocean, her foresight endless as the stars. Even Zeus, the lord of thunder, was drawn not to her beauty, but to her brilliance. Yet wisdom is dangerous to those who crave power. An oracle warned, "The child of Metis shall surpass the father, a ruler of reason, not might." Fearing the prophecy, Zeus sought to consume wisdom itself. He swallowed Metis whole, believing knowledge could be possessed. But thought cannot be contained. From the storm of his mind a spark ignited, and from pain was born a goddess, armored in light. Athena, goddess of wisdom and war. In the beginning, before wisdom had a name, there was Metis, the Titaness whose thoughts shaped the air itself. She was not a goddess of beauty or vengeance, but of clarity, strategy, and vision. When she spoke, even the stars seemed to pause, listening for the rhythm of her mind. Zeus, the newly crowned ruler of Olympus, watched her from afar, curious, cautious, and perhaps a little afraid. For he knew that power could be challenged by strength, but undone by intellect. And in Metis, he sensed both. They say love came softly between them, like lightning meeting still water. But beneath that tenderness lay fear. The earth itself whispered to Zeus, and from Delphi came the oracle's voice. "Beware the child of Metis, for she will be wiser than her father, and her wisdom shall rule the heavens." Zeus laughed at first, but laughter fades quickly when gods hear their own downfall foretold. He tried to ignore it, but every flash of her eyes reminded him of the prophecy. He saw in her not just a lover, but the birth of something he could not control. And so the king of gods turned cunning. He spoke to her with gentle words, asking her to prove her skill, to show how easily she could change form. Metis smiled. She became mist, then a bird, then a drop of shining water. In that moment, Zeus reached out and swallowed her whole. The heavens shook, the rivers stilled, and for a heartbeat, the world forgot to breathe. But wisdom cannot die. It does not dissolve or fade. Inside the mind of Zeus, Metis began to move, not as a prisoner, but as a thought that refuses silence. She whispered through his dreams. She reshaped his ideas. She turned his arrogance into reason, his wrath into contemplation. And deep within the storm of his skull, she began to form something new. A child born of thought, not of flesh. As time passed, Zeus grew restless. Pain thundered through his temples, as if the heavens themselves were hammering against his mind. The gods gathered in fear. Even Hera, ever proud, looked upon him with concern. "Call for Hephaestus," Zeus roared, voice cracking the sky. "The pain, it splits my being." Hephaestus, the smith of fire, approached with trembling hands, his hammer glowing like molten dawn. One strike. Lightning burst through Olympus. Thunder rolled through eternity. And from the fractured skull of Zeus rose a vision wrapped in golden armor. She stood radiant, a spear in one hand, a shield reflecting the sun itself. No cry, no tears, only stillness. Her gaze was steady, intelligent, eternal. Every god fell silent, awed by the clarity in her eyes. From Zeus's agony came serenity. From fear came wisdom. From the mind of a god, a new divinity was born. Hermes would later write, "She did not crawl from darkness, but stepped into light already knowing its secrets." Athena, the daughter of thought, the embodiment of logic, the warrior of balance. No other birth in the cosmos would mirror hers, for she was not born into the world, but with the world's understanding. And from that day forward, the sound of her name became the rhythm of civilization. Athena, the pulse of reason, the echo of intellect, the calm before every storm of history. Athena's birth shook the heavens, but her true power, was not in thunder or flame, it was in thought. Where Ares charged blindly into war, Athena watched, waited, calculated. Her battlefield was the mind, and her weapon was clarity. From the moment she opened her eyes, she saw the world not as chaos, but as a pattern, a vast chessboard where gods and mortals moved by reason, not instinct. When the Titans stirred again in rebellion, Zeus unleashed Athena upon them. Her golden armor glowed brighter than lightning, but her eyes remained still, focused like a blade before the strike. She descended not to destroy, but to restore balance. In her, war was not madness, it was mathematics. Each motion measured, each blow precise, each victory earned not by rage, but by understanding. She fought beside the Olympians, not as a daughter, but as the mind that made their power meaningful. And when the final Titan fell, Zeus looked upon her and knew, no throne, no weapon, no god could match the quiet strength of reason. As ages turned, Athena became the unseen hand behind every hero. When Perseus trembled before the gaze of Medusa, it was Athena who whispered through his fear. She did not offer brute strength, she gave him strategy. "Do not face the monster," she said. "Let her destroy herself." And so Perseus raised the mirrored shield, a gift of reflection, not aggression. In the serpent's rage, Medusa met her own gaze and perished by her own image. Through this, Athena revealed her nature. Wisdom triumphs where violence fails. Yet not all gods admired her restraint. Ares, the god of war's fury, saw in Athena a challenge, a rival to his chaos. To him, war was blood, screams, and conquest. To her, it was discipline, symmetry, and purpose. Their clashes were not of sword and shield, but of ideals. Where Ares sought dominance, Athena sought justice. Where he burned cities, she built them stronger. The mortals who followed Ares left ruins. Those who followed Athena left civilizations. One story tells of the founding of Athens itself. Poseidon struck the earth with his trident. A fountain of salt water burst forth. He offered power over the seas. Athena planted a seed. From the dry soil, an olive tree rose, its leaves shimmering like gold under sunlight. It was a gift of peace, sustenance, and growth. The people chose her, and so the city of reason was born. Athens, the heart of wisdom. Poseidon's waves raged in jealousy, but the olive tree stood firm, its roots binding wisdom to the land. Through that single act, Athena showed the difference between creation and control, between dominance and understanding. But even wisdom invites conflict. The more Athena gave humanity, strategy, invention, science, art, the more mortals began to believe they could rival the gods themselves. And so, pride crept in, the very flaw that had once cursed Olympus. Athena watched as kings twisted logic into tyranny, as philosophers forgot humility, as cities built in her honor warred with one another in the name of reason. She had taught them to think, but not always to feel. And in that paradox, she found her first sorrow. One night, the owl, her eternal companion, landed upon her shoulder beneath the stars. She gazed at the earth below, fires of war glowing where her light once shone, and she whispered, almost to herself, "Knowledge without empathy is the most dangerous weapon of all." The wind carried her words across temples and oceans through time itself. Mortals would call it a prophecy, but Athena knew better. It was simply truth, one that gods and men were destined to forget again and again. Athena was born of thought, but even thought carries the burden of feeling. The mortals she guided worshipped her not with fear, but with admiration. To them she was the light of intellect, the calm voice amid the chaos of gods. Yet beneath her marble composure was the one thing she could never escape: emotion, quiet and unspoken. For though Athena was reason embodied, she understood the pain of knowing too much. Among mortals there lived a girl named Arcane, a weaver whose art rivaled that of the heavens. Her fingers danced upon silk like divine music. Tapestries bloomed with colors so vivid that even nymphs stopped to marvel. When asked where she had learned such grace, Arcane smiled and said, It was my own hand, not the gods, that taught me." The words echoed upward, and in Olympus, Athena heard. Disguised as an old woman, the goddess descended to the mortal's home. The room was bathed in soft light. Spools of golden thread scattered like sunlight across the floor. "Child," the old woman whispered, "speak humbly of your gifts. No mortal rivals the gods." But Arachne's voice was proud. "If the goddess herself would compete, I would not step aside." Athena smiled, not in anger, but in a kind of sorrow only the wise can feel. With a shimmer of air, the disguise fell away. Armor gleamed, eyes blazed like dawn. The old woman was gone, and in her place stood the goddess of wisdom herself. The contest began. Side by side they wove Athena's tapestry, a song of divine order. Olympus radiant, the gods just, the world in harmony. Arachne's, however, was a mirror held to heaven. It showed the lies, the punishments, the arrogance of gods who played with mortal fates. Each thread cut deeper than a blade. And when the final pattern shone, even Athena trembled. The mortal had spoken truth, a truth too sharp to bear. Silence filled the chamber. The goddess stood motionless, her heart torn between admiration and shame. For in Arachne's defiance, she saw herself. The mind that questions, the heart that seeks perfection. But divinity does not allow vulnerability. Athena's hand shook. The threads glowed white, and in a flash of sorrow and pride intertwined, she touched the girl's brow. The mortal's body twisted, arms thinning, form shrinking, until what remained was a tiny creature with endless patience, a spider, forever weaving. Thus Arachne became the first of her kind, a reminder that even truth, when spoken without humility, can destroy. And Athena? She walked away in silence, her armor heavier than before, because wisdom had shown her a mirror, and she had not liked what she saw. In that quiet, the goddess learned a lesson even she could not teach, that knowledge without compassion becomes cruelty. The pain of perfection is knowing every flaw and seeing your own among them. Through the centuries, this moment would echo in her temples. Philosophers and kings would debate whether Athena's punishment was justice or tragedy. But the truth is simpler. She was not angered by arrogance. She was wounded by recognition. For to be truly wise is to face the shadow of your own light. And so the weaver's story became Athena's quiet burden, a thread woven into her myth and into the soul of humanity itself. Centuries passed. Empires rose beneath her name. Athena, once the radiant daughter of thought, became the silent emblem of reason itself. Marble temples crowned the hills of Athens, where philosophers spoke her words and warriors carved her symbol upon their shields. But glory has a strange rhythm. It rises to echo the divine, then falls into the noise of pride. In the golden age of Athens, her city shone like a flame in the darkness. Democracy, art, philosophy, all bore the mark of her wisdom. Yet the people who praised her began to forget what she stood for. They built statues higher, temples grander, but their hearts grew restless. Wisdom became competition. Knowledge became arrogance. And the city that bore her name slowly forgot her soul. From Olympus, Athena watched, not with wrath, but with an ache only immortals can feel. She had given mortals the gift of understanding, but they wielded it as a sword. They spoke of logic and justice, but used them to justify their wars. The goddess of reason watched reason become politics. The goddess of strategy watched strategy become manipulation. And as Athens fought Sparta and brother turned against brother, she whispered into the wind, "Wisdom without virtue is the beginning of ruin." But no one heard. The roar of pride was louder than any prophecy. When Athens fell, her temples cracked beneath foreign suns. The Parthenon, once white as thought itself, darkened with smoke and dust. Statues lay broken, their faces eroded by centuries of forgetting. The owl, her sacred symbol, no longer soared over marble skies. It nested among ruins, watching quietly as men argued over power in the shadows of what once was truth. Athena descended once more, unseen, unheard. She walked the empty colonnades of her temple, her footsteps echoing against stone that once sang her name. She placed her hand upon a fallen pillar and felt the faint pulse of memory beneath it, as if the stones themselves remembered the ideals they were built upon. She did not weep. Gods do not weep. But if the wind had a soul, it would have sworn that the air around her trembled like the breath before sorrow. In that silence, she understood the cruel balance of existence, that wisdom cannot save those who refuse to listen, that even truth, when shouted into pride, becomes just another noise. Athena realized she could not guide forever. Every civilization must choose to rise through thought or fall through ignorance, and so she withdrew, not in anger, but in reflection. The goddess who once stood upon battlefields now sat among clouds, her spear resting beside her, her eyes turned inward, seeking not dominion over others, but peace within herself. The poets say that when the last fires of Athens dimmed, a faint light appeared upon the Acropolis. An owl circled once, and from the ruins a whisper echoed like a heartbeat through time. I am not gone. I am thought, waiting to be remembered. For wisdom never truly dies. It simply waits, for minds brave enough to rediscover it, and hearts gentle enough to understand it. And so Athena faded from temples into philosophy, from statue into conscience, from legend into the quiet persistence of truth itself. Athena may have vanished from Olympus, but her spirit did not fade, it transformed. Across the centuries, as empires rose from the ashes of Greece, her wisdom took new shapes, speaking through minds that had never seen her face. In Rome, they called her Minerva, patron of artisans and thinkers. Her temples glowed with bronze and marble, yet her voice was the same. Think before you act. Create before you destroy. When the last philosophers of Athens fled their burning libraries, they carried her light within scrolls and memories. Through their words, Athena walked quietly into the future. Her essence crossed deserts and seas, whispering into the hearts of scholars, architects, generals, and dreamers. For though the gods of Olympus fell silent, the idea of Athena never did. Wherever humanity sought reason over chaos, justice over conquest, she lived again. During the Renaissance, painters revived her image, not as a warrior, but as a symbol of intellect and rebirth. Her olive branch appeared beside books and compasses, her owl etched in the margins of scientific manuscripts. She became Sapientia, the divine embodiment of wisdom itself. And though her temples had crumbled, her sanctuary now stood in every mind brave enough to question. But perhaps her truest temple was built not from marble, but from ideas. The architects who shaped democracy, the philosophers who challenged kings, the scientists who measured the stars, all carried her spark. For every age that rises on the foundation of thought is an echo of her creation. She no longer stood above the world, guiding mortals like a goddess. She lived within them. In every courtroom where justice seeks balance, Athena's scales hang unseen. In every library, her voice hums in the turning of pages. And in every artist who sees beauty, not just in color, but in truth. Her olive tree grows anew. Her wisdom became civilization's compass, her discipline, its architecture, her patience, its endurance. Without Athena, humanity might have mastered the sword, but never the mind. Yet even in her endurance, there lies a question she left unanswered, a question she entrusted to us. Can wisdom survive desire? Can knowledge outlast greed? Can we, the children of her thought, remember what she truly meant? For Athena's legacy is not marble or myth. It is the fragile bridge between understanding and humility. She taught the world that reason without empathy is tyranny, and compassion without reason is chaos. To walk her path is to walk the line between both, the balance that sustains civilization itself. Today, her symbols still endure, on coins, on shields, on city seals. But the truest image of Athena is not carved in stone. It is in the moment when a teacher opens a child's mind, when a leader chooses wisdom over pride, when an artist creates truth not for glory, but for understanding. There, in the quiet act of thought, Athena breathes again. Her voice is not ancient, it is eternal. She is not gone. She is the whisper in every age that seeks the light. Athena, the mind that never dies. What remains of a goddess when the temples fall? What endures when her name fades from marble and prayer? The answer is not in the heavens, but within the mind that still seeks truth. Athena was never a goddess of conquest. She was the stillness before decision, the pause between chaos and clarity. She does not command, she reminds, and her message is the same across all ages. Wisdom is not what you know, it is what you choose to do with what you know. In the quiet moments of thought, she is there, the unseen whisper guiding the hand that hesitates. When we choose patience over anger, understanding over pride, creation over destruction, Athena breathes through us. Her temple is no longer stone, it is the conscience. Through millennia, humanity has rewritten her face. She has been a goddess, a symbol, a myth, but also a question. What does it mean to be wise? Is it victory through logic, or compassion through restraint? Athena teaches that true wisdom is not in answers, but in the courage to ask. In every era, when the world stands at the edge of arrogance, she returns. Not in thunder or miracle, but in the subtle flicker of realization. A scientist pausing before discovery, a leader rethinking a war, a child staring at the stars for the first time. These are her modern miracles. Athena no longer wields a spear, she wields introspection. Yet even she, the goddess of wisdom, knew the limits of the mind. For intellect without heart is a light that blinds, and compassion without reason is a flame that consumes. Athena's perfection was never her flaw, it was her burden. To know the balance between logic and love, between justice and mercy, is to walk the narrowest bridge between heaven and earth. And perhaps that is why she endures, because we are still learning to cross it. If the myths of gods are reflections of humanity, then Athena is the mirror we avoid, because she shows us both our brilliance and our blindness. She is the whisper that asks, when will you stop fighting only to win and start fighting to understand? In a world where noise replaces thought, her silence is rebellion. Where deception thrives, her truth becomes courage. And where despair darkens reason, her light, soft, golden, unwavering, still burns. The ancient Greeks believed that wisdom was not learned, it was remembered. That the soul carries fragments of divine reason and spends its life trying to recall them. Perhaps Athena is not a goddess at all, but that memory, the echo of clarity that lives in every human heart. Athena watches, not from Olympus, but from the spaces between thoughts. She no longer seeks worship, only awakening, because the truest offering to her is not gold or marble, it is understanding. And as long as one mind dares to think, one heart dares to question, and one soul dares to act with reason, the goddess of wisdom will never fade. The owl circles once more above the ruins of Athens, its wings brushing the dust of centuries into light. The goddess of wisdom does not speak, for her silence has already taught enough. Below, the city breathes, its people dreaming, creating, questioning. In every spark of thought, Athena lives on. But as dawn breaks over marble and sky, another light begins to rise. A brilliance not of logic, but of illumination. It sings through liars and hearts alike, calling humankind toward art, healing, and truth. From the horizon of Olympus, a new voice awakens, the god of light and prophecy, Apollo. And thus, the story continues.